Bruxelles, je t'aime. Tu m'avais manqué, Bruxelles, je t'aime, Bruxelles, je t'aime. T'es ma préférée, Bruxelles, je t'aime, Bruxelles, je t'aime.
Hello there and welcome to Bruxelles, je t'aime, Euronews' weekly talk show about European news. On Brussels, my love, we take a look at some of the news stories of the week and hear what's at stake for you and for Europe. I'm Maeve McMahon. Thanks for joining us. Coming up this week, Maloney's migration conundrum. Thousands of migrants have landed on the tiny touristy island of Lampedusa, outnumbering the local population and causing uproar among residents. The EU Commission President visited the island, promising that a European solution would be given to a European problem. But 10 years after the Lampedusa migrant shipwreck tragedy, we ask if that's even possible. And it's been called the silent pandemic. Air pollution, that disgusting sensation in your nose you may be familiar with if you live in a congested city like Rome, Paris or Brussels. MEPs voted on a revised law to improve air quality in the EU, but delayed aligning with World Health Organization guidelines until 2035. We check what this all means for our health, but also how road users are feeling about this green wave. With our panel this week, Lucas Mandl, Austrian MEP from the European People's Party. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Rebecca Christie from the economic think tank Bruegel. Welcome.
Glad to be back.
And Matteo Albania from the public affairs firm Must and Partners.
Thank you.
How are you all doing? How was your week?
Nice and busy.
Nice and busy. Well, in just a minute, I will get your thoughts on those stories we mentioned. But first, I'd like to just remind our viewers why the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen spent last weekend in Lampedusa.
It is the movie we have watched too many times before. Thousands of migrants in cramped conditions on the island of Lampedusa and finger-pointing from all sides on what to do and how. To show Europe cares, the EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen stood side by side with Italy's Giorgia Meloni. In her pocket, a 10-point plan of support. From helping to redistribute new arrivals to potentially expanding naval missions in the Mediterranean, the plan is a mix of old and new ideas, but it's vague and needs backing from EU capitals to work. For now, Italy has brought in its own measures. It will build detention centers and detain migrants for up to 18 months. Begging the question, amidst this new Italian emergency, why are European heads of state taking so long to adopt and finalize a proper EU migration pact?
So there you are again, thousands of people arriving in Europe, but still no coordinated plan. Lucas Mandl, perhaps we'll start with yourself. What has the reaction been over in the European Parliament to this, and as well to the response of the Italian Prime Minister?
And actually, in the Home Affairs Committee of the European Parliament, we have been negotiating on the migration package since 2020, exactly 3 years now, and it's still not done. There were mistakes in the Parliament, but there were also mistakes in the European Council of the Member States governments. Actually, this week, again, there was a backslash due to the behavior of the Member States governments. We need a solution. That's why I appreciate that Meloni immediately asked von der Leyen to come, because it's responsible for Europe in its entirety, not only for this or that member state. We know that, and we have known that for many years, but again and again, member states were left alone, different member states for different reasons in the past. And yeah, that's the first Italian prime minister who is acting differently, because other prime ministers criticized EU, but this lady prime minister, I would say, immediately took into the responsibility of von der Leyen herself, and she had to come.
Let's bring in the perspective then from Rebecca Christie, how you've been digesting this story. And of course, we mentioned the finger pointing, and it's still happening this very week in Brussels.
Migration is an issue that feels very of the moment because it's something that so many people can relate to. They see migrants, they know migrants, they can imagine a little bit what that's like. For Meloni, it's a very key issue that fits with her strategy of finding things that connect with voters and don't alienate financial markets. With the Italian economy struggling, Meloni has to find a way to do things that maintain her control of the Italian government, look for ways to help the Italian economy out of this, and avoid spooking financial markets.
And Meloni, of course, finding it a little bit harder to govern. It was a little bit easier perhaps before she got into the role. It's not an easy role she has had to play. I'm looking at yourself because, of course, you're from Sicily, so the story is probably much closer to your heart than a lot of our viewers. Perhaps what's your take on the situation and on the government's handling of it?
I think that Meloni quickly realized that she cannot do this alone. She has promised during the election campaign last year that less migrants will be coming into Italy, and this is not the case after 1 year into government. She has to do something, and indeed the fact that von der Leyen came to Lampedusa, it was a strong signal. But more has to be done, because I have the feeling that this is all of a déjà vu. The 10-point plan, the visit to Lampedusa, the visit to these migrants' hubs. The point is that the other governments are not taking this into their own hands.
Is it because it's out of mind, perhaps out of sight? And of course, Giorgia Meloni is among many world leaders over in New York this week, and she's bringing that strong message as well to that platform that she is feeling very much alone. And she said, of course, very clearly when she was standing alongside Ursula von der Leyen that it's not a solidarity gesture of Europe towards Italy, but actually it's a responsibility towards the country, because these are the borders of Italy, but they're also the borders of Europe. But this message seems to be falling on deaf ears, Rebecca Christie.
It's a tough situation the EU has to confront, because it's also looking at enlargement. And as the EU expands eastward, there'll be a whole lot of other people that one has to integrate into the EU and into EU values. 100 years ago, immigration and border crossing was seen as an engine of economic growth, but now it's something that voters are afraid of.
Voters are afraid of, and of course it probably doesn't get you many votes either if you have policies in favour as well of welcoming migrants.
Of course, in democracy, votes are always important, but at the moment we have a major crisis and have to deal with it, and this is not a partisan thing. I agree with Mr. Albania that we have déjà vus of many kinds, especially in terms of content, because what the Commission's President has proposed in her 10 points plan in Lampedusa is more or less what we have been negotiating on for 3 years, but it's still not yet done. It was a Commission's proposal which was good, but the Commission didn't set the right priorities in the past. Now she set the right priorities by responding to Meloni's invite, and this is why I appreciate the Meloni approach, but also this new priority setting by von der Leyen. It's late during the legislature to set the right priorities, but obviously she is doing it now, and if it leads to a result, it will be good.
I want to dive more into that 10-point plan, which I have right here beside me. But first, just a bit of context for our viewers on that island of Lampedusa. They mightn't be as familiar with it as you are. Have you been to the island?
I've never been myself, but of course, coming from Sicily, I'm quite acquainted. I have people that have friends that live there. The situation is difficult for the people that live there. Of course, we have mixed feelings. There are those that they are welcoming me. Italian people, Sicilian, we are welcoming people, but there is still always a limit. I mean, seeing the double of the population, or as much as the population of migrants coming in, 7,000, 8,000, this is a situation that has definitely reached its limits.
Well, record-breaking amount of people coming in, 12,000 people, I believe, in just 6 days on an island of an area of 20 square kilometres, and inhabitants are just over 6,462.
Yeah, but we also have to say that, I mean, regarding to Meloni, it's also interesting to know that most of the governments that are opposing migrants' relocations are the governments that they are in the same political families of Meloni herself. I'm thinking about Poland, I'm thinking about Orban. So probably the talks have to be also among political families, and not just thinking about the next election cycle, but really
that's
thinking
the huge difference. I agree with you, but you can't imagine a Hungarian Prime Minister or a Polish Prime Minister at the moment who would immediately invite the Commission's President and also ask for her responsibility. This is the way to act. This is the way to cooperate, because we will only solve this issue on a European level via cooperation, not only via criticizing each other.
But this is my
von der Leyen
point.
didn't have another chance to go there, and she did.
But where is the cooperation? I don't see any cooperation.
Well,
I mean, we supposedly have, if you look at the 10-point plan, you have this voluntary solidarity mechanism. 18 member states have signed up. But apart from Portugal this week, I haven't seen anyone saying that they'll step in and help out, Rebecca.
It's really hard for Europe, because accepting people who don't look like you and who don't come from the same culture of you is something that people are really struggling with right now. And you see politically, Meloni has a lot of incentives to maintain ties with Europe, again, to keep financial markets happy. Financial markets always react poorly when Italy distances itself from the European center. On the other hand, her political base is very much these nationalist, more closed-minded political orientations.
And interesting what you say there, because I've seen as well over in Germany, the Greens are taking a step perhaps towards the middle or towards the right, in the sense that they're making public statements that they want to see asylum seekers sent back very fast, taking a different approach perhaps to the past. But just let's talk to you about this voluntary solidarity mechanism. Austria, I understand, is not one of these countries.
Austria has contributed among two others, in total three, Sweden, Germany and Austria, most since the beginning of the migration crisis, 2015. Austria has the largest number of positive asylum results all over the world per capita. But each country is affected differently. Greece, Spain, Italy are affected as border countries. Austria, Germany, Sweden are affected because people want to go there. What we need is this mandatory solidarity mechanism, and this is the main part of the migration package, which is still not decided on European level. And there were ideological hurdles within the European Parliament. There was disinterest by some member states in the European Council of Member States governments. So this is the kind of cooperation I meant before, that the different levels, also the level of government in a country like Italy and the European Commission, have to cooperate. And to be very frank, if it would not be next year election and Ursula von der Leyen wanting to become Commission's president again, I don't know whether she would have responded positively to Giorgia Meloni's invite, but now she's acting. Now she's setting the right priorities, and this is due also to our pressure from the European Parliament for over a long period of time now. So I see a reason for optimism at the moment after many years of lacking decisions.
So the problem there is the word voluntary. It should be mandatory. I mean, because of course, until it's voluntary, every government, every head of state will think about its electoral base.
And it's also multidimensional. I mean, solidarity means to take care of asylum-seeking procedures, to take care of returns. Solidarity means to contribute jointly to Frontex and other missions to protecting the borders. And solidarity especially means to fight disinformation and the smuggling business of human trafficking, which leads to this suffering people you've just seen also on this program again. I mean, people are suffering on the routes, and people are concerned within Europe about migration generally.
But it's solidarity. I mean, this word we've heard so many times before, but it doesn't really translate into anything, right, in reality. What's your take?
Europe is still uncomfortable with non-white immigration. It's something that they step around, they say, oh, it's culture, it's the flood, it's where they're coming, it's the boats. But a lot of it has to do with cultures here not being used to having people who don't look like them wanting to join their culture, learn their language, and fit into society. Finding excuses why these people won't fit is not a good solution. There needs to be a much more optimistic welcome of why they can, will, and should fit. And it will help the European economy to have these people. That's a message that often gets lost. But these people have the potential to bring benefits, not just burdens.
Interesting point there. Well, look, what we said earlier, for a lot of us here in Europe watching the image from Italy, it feels very, very far away. But of course, for Italians, it is very close to home. To find out more, we sent our Rome correspondent, that's Giorgia Orlandi, to the streets of Rome to ask people how they felt about the situation and also what they want to see done to actually address it.
I live quite close to Rome's main railway station. When I get there, the situation is terrible. Most of them sleep rough, and it's not safe at all. But I also understand that it's difficult for everyone. These people pay the highest price. They live in a foreign country, and they don't know their fate. I don't think we're able to stop migration flows. They are part of our history, they have always been there, and they have left a visible mark on past civilizations. I think those who are in charge of managing the situation should be responsible for what happens.
Italy is left alone when it comes to facing this migration crisis. So the country needs help. Even though Lampedusa's location encourages migrant arrivals, I think Malta should do more to help, as well as other member states within the European Union. More countries should make their ports available to facilitate landings.
It feels like just this non-stop saga.
I see it a bit more optimistic, even if it's absolutely right what you state, and it's overdue for a long time. But we had the decision in the Parliament in March this year. We had a decision among the migration ministers, the Home Affairs ministers in May this year, and now it's really time to decide on. And maybe the recent crisis, and also von der Leyen traveling a few days after State of the Union speech, where migration didn't play a major role, but then due to the crisis, traveling and pointing out the 10 points plan, which is actually more or less what we have been negotiating on for 3 years already. Maybe now is the time for a decision, and I push for that parliamentarily, but also member states, governments and the Commission should do that.
I'd like to talk as well about the 10th point in this 10-point plan, which is the EU-Tunisia Pact, that was signed a couple of weeks ago by Ursula von der Leyen, Giorgia Meloni and Mark Rutte. Rebecca, that deal was quite rushed in, and we've seen quite a strong reaction coming from Josep Borrell, and a letter, seemingly, that was written as well from a number of member states calling it, expressing incomprehension was the word, and concerns about this deal.
It shows the discomfort the EU has with taking decisive action in a tough situation. In general, when there's a crisis in Europe, if it's not clear what the course of action is, the impulse is to stand still, lest you make a mistake, lest you make a wrong move.
And this makes the problems even worse, usually. Just want to agree with you and make the point. It makes the problem worse if you don't act.
It was a copy and paste from what happened with Syria and Turkey. The same deal. We thought that it could work in the same way with Tunisia, but it doesn't, and it will not. So
but
migration is not the same.
Turkey wants to be called Turkey now, as we know, and I respect that. And Turkey misused the deal for threatening us, as we know, a few years ago. But generally, the deal was important, and the deal remains important.
You do get to a point. You do get to a point where plan beats no plan. And the one thing you can say about this is at least they did something. They took some kind of action. And decisions are going to have to be taken. And they are probably not going to be perfect, because if there were a perfect and easy solution, we'd be doing it.
Couldn't agree more.
But interesting, the perception of the media, because I've been reading a lot of media reports this week on the situation in Lampedusa. Matteo, are Italians supportive of this kind of deal with Tunisia?
I think that Italians are supportive of any solution that stops seeing people coming to Mediterranean shores, to their own shores. And whatever it's, one of the people interviewed in the street said that Italy is left alone. Well, that's the feeling that most Italians have. But not just now, but in the last 10 years, we have the feeling that Italy has always been left alone, that then there are talks, there are summits, there are special meetings at the EU level, but then nothing or little is done at the EU level, really to make migration a European problem of the Irish, of the Polish, of the Danish, and of the Italians as well.
And is that a feeling or a message that you have strong in your head and you take as well to voters as you campaign, as I believe you'd like to run again next year?
This is also why I emphasize that this is a European endeavour, a common European endeavour to face the challenges that come along with migration. Actually, we are very attractive. We're a very attractive part of the world, and other attractive parts, such as Australia, Canada, US and others, they deal with migration much better than we do.
Then why can't we manage migration? I mean, as Rebecca Christie perfectly pointed out earlier, we also need it. We have labour shortages. We heard it last week in Ursula von der Leyen's speech in Strasbourg. There's a massive gap in the market that needs to be filled.
We have quite the other way around situation in Europe. We face migration of that kind, but we don't are competitive in the, let's say, global competition on workers and skilled workers especially.
Well, also when migration is used as a tool for propaganda, like in Poland there was going to be a referendum on relocation of migrants, that doesn't help the debate. That doesn't help the debate.
The distinction between good migrants and less desirable migrants is not helpful in the global scheme. It's very tempting for voters, and this is not a criticism of you, but it is a thing that comes up. Hailing from North America, you really see that that's usually a code for racism, and that's something that Europe has a very poor track record of confronting head-on, and something that the other places in the world have had to address, even though they haven't always done it well.
And this is the elephant in the room.
Nobody's doing more than Europe is doing in terms of humanitarian aid. Nobody is doing more on earth in terms of asylum, and as you know, only 20%, even less, receive asylum status in Europe. The others are not even granted asylum. So they are tempted by smugglers, by human trafficking, by disinformation to come here, but
also by racist attacks. We've seen reports from NGOs in Tunisia, and we have spoken as well here at Euronews to people in Tunisia, and they have seen it with their own eyes. Racist attacks against many people, and that's also seeing why they're fleeing.
Yeah, that's something that has to be fought in each and every kind, like disinformation, like human trafficking, and each kind of racism. But we also have to face the labour market issues due to the lack of workers, especially skilled workers, which is a completely different sphere. We have to deal with both. We have to grant asylum.
I really want to push back against this idea that it's a different sphere, because you have workers who come in, people can become trained. People can become trained, and also you have a situation where you need just a bigger workforce, and you need people who are available to do the jobs that are available. If you want to have a more competitive Europe, you need to have workers, you need to have companies. You can't sit here and pick and choose, oh, we want to have a global giant, but not like that. You have to take the whole package.
And Christy, we're going to have to stop you there. A conversation we will inevitably, of course, come back to and keep our viewers informed. Thank you so much to you all. And you stay with us, because after the break we'll be hearing from how in about 10 years we'll be able to take our local authorities to court for air pollution. Stay with us. Welcome back to Brussels, My Love, Euronews' weekly talk show. I'm Maeve McMahon, and along with Lucas Mandel, Rebecca Christie and Matteo Albania, we're talking through some of the news stories of the week. And one that caught our eye, given that this week also marked International Car Free Day, was a vote in the European Parliament on air quality to help Europe achieve its dream of zero pollution by 2050. 363 MEPs voted in favour, 226 against, and 46 abstained on the vote, which sets a stricter 2035 limit for pollutants like nitrogen dioxide, so that air quality here in the European Union is not harmful to health and biodiversity. Lucas Mandel, I'm turning to you, the MEP here around the table, because your party voted against, but you voted in favour. So very divisive issue for your party, like a lot of these green files.
Well, the European People's Party group decided to vote against because of very strict, also in my view, unrealistically strict goals, which is usually in the European Parliament. We always set the bar very, very high, which can't be achieved, but okay, there is a direction to go. In this case, I understand the colleagues who voted against. I voted in favor because I see air pollution as one of the major problems of our time, especially in urban centers, especially in our kind of civilization. And this is why the general approach to fight air pollution within EU, but also in other parts of Europe, which are not yet in EU, by the way, where the situation is sometimes even worse.
And this week we saw an extensive report by The Guardian. Our colleagues over at The Guardian, they had an investigative report about air pollution and the impacts it's having on our health. They said it was pretty detrimental in Eastern Europe and also in Italy, in your country. Do you welcome this vote from the Parliament?
Personally, I do welcome this vote. I think that more has to be done on this regard. I think that we start even late, but a balance has to be found. I mean, a lot of the Green Deal reforms and law proposed by the Commission, it is true that they set the bar probably too high. There is industry sector affected by this.
How will this impact industry, Rebecca Christie?
It's really tough with the environment to find something that makes an impact on air pollution, that has the democratic support to actually get done, and that will allow people to continue to get to their jobs and get where they're going. We see in Brussels this week with all of the anti-car legislation, that's great if you're able-bodied, if you're able to ride a bicycle. If you're trying to get around multiple children, if you're disabled, if you're unable to drive, you need alternative forms of transport. And so the emphasis has to go on all of the different angles, on improving train access, on improving public transit, on finding ways to help people get what they need and not just tell them what they can't do.
Well, in just a minute, I want to show you a clip. We spoke to the motorcycle industry to see how they're feeling about all this legislation. But first, we caught up with an NGO as well, Transport Environment, just to find out what the quality was like of air right here in Brussels in the EU quarter. Take a listen now to Alex Keynes.
Air pollution is a silent and often invisible killer. We know that it's responsible for over 300,000 premature deaths across the EU every single year. You are getting much higher, much more dangerous levels of toxic air pollution around less affluent areas, poorer areas, and that's actually because of a much higher density of traffic, because you have significantly higher emissions of toxic NO2 and particulate emissions, which is coming from the cars that you see around us now. And also in the area we are in now, near the European quarter, you also are getting these very high concentrations of NO2.
Alex Keynes there. It's worth pointing out he did say the situation had improved as well over the last couple of years in Brussels, that it's gradually getting a little bit better. But how to address that issue, he said, of in some neighbourhoods it's extremely serious.
Well, I mean, recently Brussels even launched the Good Move plan that has seen some improvement. I still think that more has to be done. The public transport is not well developed. Other alternative ways of moving, they're not well developed. Company cars are very well spread, and this is another problem that adds traffic to the streets of Brussels. So you have to give people valid alternative.
And Lucas Mandel, we've seen France and Germany call on the Commission, if you like, for a legislative pause. What's the feeling over in Austria, and what are the conversations that you're having with your voters about all these legislative files linked to the Green Deal?
Well, actually, we have to see the target. It's clear to fight climate change. and we have to remain with that, but we have to see maybe two factors. The one is it's not about extra burden, extra bureaucracy, extra administrative issues, but it has to be a lot of innovation, sharing economy, innovation in terms of academia, science, research, development. That's the one thing. The other thing is we need a global approach because we are even less than 5% of world's population.
How can we have a global approach if we can't even agree on anything here as 27?
Yeah, but this is it. I mean, humanity has to fight climate change jointly all together because otherwise we will not fight climate change at all, but we will weaken Europe time and again if we do it alone. So we need this global outreach. We need more strength to the outside. This is also connected to the other
Quick reaction to that, Rebecca?
It touches everything. You see that with this debate with China over the electric batteries. We need affordable electric cars. We also need strong European industry. How do you have both of these things at the same time? It's tough.
And electric mobility is not, of course, the silver bullet either. According to Dolph Villigers, he is the head of the European Motorcycle Association, and our Paul Larocque-Hoppeneau had the opportunity to ask him about how he felt about all these files and how they could dramatically change his life and his lifestyle.
I think that we need more green regulations because, of course, of the planet and the climate change. We cannot deny that. Does that mean that we should all switch to electric? I would say no. I don't think that electric motorcycles are the silver bullet. I don't think that we should give up the combustion engine. We should give it up partially for urban areas. But at the moment, maybe in future sometimes, but for now, we still need combustion engines for longer distances.
He has a point there, right, about the electric vehicles?
I guess to be open for where still the combustion engine will be needed, will be important for Europe in many different areas, but we need as much as electricity as possible in our mobility, sharing economy I already mentioned. So let's remain open. Let's also remain open for research and development.
You make that
trust
point
the
already,
scientists.
Matteo?
Yes, and let's not burden national government with more regulations. Also, there is now the energy efficiency building regulations. I think that this green transition is good, but it has to be well thought. We cannot just set deadlines and ban everything because we have to do everything now. It is to be really well thought and not be a burden for companies and for enterprises.
Is that the message that you're getting? It's a burden. Are people you're speaking to happy to see the back of perhaps the former commissioner who's in charge of climate, Frans Timmermans?
Yeah, I think that nowadays Europe on the Green Deal is seen as a burden, as extra regulatory, as extra weight on their shoulders. And I mean, if I think about many countries where they have, for example, very old buildings and now they are afraid that they need to renew them, who is going to pay for that? And then the heat pumps and so forth. I mean, it's a wave.
Okay. Going to have to stop you there. Thank you so much, Matteo. Thank you so much, Rebecca, as well. And thank you so much to Lucas Mandel for being with us here. And thank you so much for watching. See you soon here on Euronews. Hello there, welcome back to Brussels, my love, Euronews' weekly talk show. I'm Maeve McMahon. Now, this week, a big talking point here in Brussels was the announcement of the 2023 nominees for the European Parliament's Freedom of Thought Sakharov Prize. That's the prestigious human rights prize awarded in the past to the likes of Malala and Alexei Navalny. It's of course up to political groups to forward names. And on the list this year are Mahsa Amini from the Woman Life Freedom Movement in Iran, the Ugandan climate justice activist Vanessa Nakate, abortion rights activists from Poland, and the billionaire and ex-owner Elon Musk. Have you seen this list and what's your reaction, Rebecca?
The idea that we should privilege white male rich guys' speech and reward that even more than the global economy already does is pretty baffling to me. I hope this goes nowhere.
Matteo?
Absolutely agree. I think it's a publicity stunt put forward by the group, by the Identity Democracy. If I think that this prize has been awarded to the Belarus opposition, to the people of Ukraine, given to a billionaire that has done not very much about the freedom of speech in its new social media X, I think it's really just a publicity stunt to talk about it.
Lucas Mandel, what was the word on the corridors this week of the Parliament?
I supported the idea of Mahsa Amini to grant her the Sakharov Prize from the very beginning, when it was just an idea among a small group in the European Parliament. And I don't care whether Elon Musk would be man, white or rich. It's just the wrong laureate for something like that. Frankly, when I saw the list, I first thought it would be a bad joke. Just
Well, I'll tell our viewers why his name was on the list, will we? It was actually the far-right wing group Identity and Democracy that threw his name into the hat, and we wanted to find out why they thought he deserved it. So we sent our Paul Larocque-Hoppeneau to speak to the French MEP and party member Thierry Mariani.
I think he's a symbol for freedom of thought. But in a character, you have multiple facets. What we are judging here with the prize is there something in danger? For me, today, the symbol is freedom of thought. You can think differently than most people, and the one that, for now, paradoxically embodies this freedom of thought is Elon Musk, whatever his character is. You know, there will always be people who will demonize those who want this freedom to continue to exist. My freedom of thought, they won't have it.
Thierry Mariani there, very clear on his reasons.
I said it was a bad joke, but okay, we have to deal with it. It was a proposal, and it was meant to be serious. Just want to make an important point. It's not freedom of thought provision if you provide, like it would be nutrition, food on the same level as poison. When something is toxic or when something is good, it's a difference. And if you provide something on the same level, which is toxic or which is positive, it's not a provision for freedom of thought. And this is what Elon Musk's platform is doing right now. And this is what we even fight with our endeavor against disinformation, against foreign interference.
Rebecca Christie,
it harms our societies.
On Twitter, or X now as it's called?
I am. I use it much less since Musk has made it easier for Nazis and trolls to express their thoughts and made it harder for people who are targets of abuse and pylons to continue to express themselves by removing all of the content moderation. It's the wrong direction.
Absolutely, I second this vote. It's the wrong direction. There are other social networks that they are growing, that they are expanding Mastodon threads from Instagram. So I think there are other places where you can discuss, you can share your thoughts in a civil manner. I think that X is going towards another direction. They have the freedom. The ID group has the freedom to propose Elon Musk, and we have the freedom to criticize it.
We won't find out until October, I believe, who the last 3 nominees are, and then we'll have to wait until December to hear who the winners are. You said earlier you would like to see the Iranians win. Of course, last week we saw...
For the reason that she herself, she gave her life for freedom of thought, but also for the whole movement, for women, freedom, Iran.
Thank you so much, Lucas Mandel. Thank you so much, Rebecca Christie, for being here. And thank you as well to Matteo Albania for being our guest as well this week. And thank you so much for watching. If you have any comments on any of the stories that we covered or anything that you'd like us to dive into, reach out. Our email address is brusselsmylove@euronews.com. You can also find us on Instagram. See you soon here on Euronews.